This is the eHealth Radio Network, your source for health advice on demand. And now your host, Eric Michaels.
Thanks for joining us once again here on the eHealth Radio Network. This is your host, Eric Michaels. Today on the program, we're speaking with Dr. Cara Lee Barker, a popular public speaker who has a private international practice that helps individuals transform their secret suffering into greater strength. Dr. Barker is the author of 3 books, including her latest release, Nightlight, My Soul Calling, Body Listening, Heart Speaking. And Dr. Barker, thanks for joining us here today on eHealth Radio.
It's my pleasure, truly.
And ours as well. Really appreciate your time. So to lead things off, tell us, Dr. Barker, how are loss, grief, and trauma seedbeds for renewed life?
Well, okay. Think of, I'm looking outside and I'm looking at, I just planted some tulip bulbs and daffodil bulbs, but they're down there in the dark for a long, long time before they bloom. And to help them, we have to get our hands in the dirt. And I think that grief, loss, and trauma are a pretty dark place when it happens. And the thought that something good can come of it is on another galaxy, truly. So, when somebody's suffering that, I don't say to them right away, there are seeds in this for your growth, because they need to be met where they are. And it takes a long time. But eventually, like when my only son was killed 31 years ago, eventually, as I got through the grief, although the loss never really leaves, I began to see how that could be used as a contribution to others. And likewise with my own traumas, like breaking both ankles in one fall 4 years ago. It all can be turned into something, but it requires what we don't have so much of in the Western world is patience and faith and trust.
Well, that certainly is true. We do lack those here in the Western world. I'd agree with that. Tell me, what are the 4 major conflicts people face in their lives? Get into that a little bit.
Well, we just named one. The first one is any form of loss, trauma, grief. They often go very closely together. The second one is having no direction for the next step. I call it directionless. It's like, well, what do I do about my job? I can't leave it because I don't know what's there. What do I do about my marriage? I'm not sure, that I am clueless. And no matter how many T-charts I make, the pluses, the minuses for leaving my job, say, it never satisfying because it's always from the head. So we have to go inside, and we have to find that wee small voice inside, which is the third, is when people realize, I've been reading the wrong script. This isn't me. How did I end up here? And so it's a journey into the interior of who we are. And the poets and philosophers and some psychiatrists have said that is the quiet space inside our heart. But it's really hard with all the music going on everywhere, particularly in a political year. And then the fourth category is issues surrounding love. Is this love? If this is love, this isn't what I thought. Or, oh, maybe this is part of love. I've been married for 43 years. And if you add my first marriage, that makes 53 years. That's a lot of marriage. And it changes over time, and so does love.
Yeah, good points made there, especially in regards to relationships and marriage. Thanks for sharing that. Today we're speaking with Dr. Cara Lee Barker. She is the author of Nightlight, My Soul Calling, Body Listening, Heart Speaking here on eHealth Radio's Health News Channel, a part of the eHealth Radio Network. Now, tell us, Dr. Barker, what is the relationship between children's distress and their parents?
Children, until they're 12 years old, they cannot separate what's happening outside to what's happening inside. It's called formal operations thinking. So under that, children are little sponges. And, when we're around little baby and we look into those eyes, they're like mirrors. They're just wide open and lovely. And there's no ego in there yet. So as children get older, they just absorb. If there's tension in the house, if there's loss and trauma, grief in the house, if there's confusion in the house, they absorb it. They don't know what it means, but they absorb it. And that all goes down into the unconscious and stays there and festers until they're much, much older and something similar comes up And then all of a sudden that old stuff comes up, and that we can deal with. There's a wonderful book called The Inner World of Childhood, which is an excellent book for people who want to investigate that. Also dreams, by the way. Children's dreams can be very informative about what's happening in the household and with the adults.
I'm sure we could talk a lot more about that, and your comments on that quite interesting, no doubt about that. Now, how do you convert self-doubt to self-compassion?
I have a client right now who's struggling with that. And his self-doubt is, like people who have self-doubt, which is all of us at times, is connected to a misleading narrative, a misleading story that we tell ourselves about ourselves. Like he says, well, I'm not good enough to get a job. I can't get a new job. That's his inner narrative. That's all coming from self-doubt. Now, if I looked at him and listened to him for a nanosecond, you can see he's a very attractive man. He's very smart. He's got some really interesting skill sets. What's stopping him is his self-doubt. So the work for him is for him first to notice when he's doubting himself and to write it down, so he can start to grok his narrative that's off and it's limiting him. And the more we do that, the more we go, oh, well, first of all, maybe I'm not so bad after all. Oh, well, that was my best. I gave it my best shot. Good for me. It's not becoming haughty or arrogant. It's becoming kind to the self. And depending on our background, that can take a lot of work and a lot of years. Sorry to say.
Certainly appreciate those tips there on self-doubt, and really appreciate your joining us here today. Before you go, and in conclusion, any closing thoughts, a takeaway, a tip, or anything else you'd like to mention as we conclude today?
I would like to say to the listeners, to me and to you, let's pretend this is our last day on earth. Not to be sad, but okay, if I were really going to live this day with love in my heart toward myself and others, if I were to use my real voice and not be barred by self-doubt, if I were to be confident in my next step and just let her rip, because this I'm pretending is my last day, and then if I could be respectful to myself and others, we're not always on the same channel, but have self-respect. I think those things would help a long way. And then, of course, my book would be great. Nightlight, my soul calling, my body listening, and my heart speaking. And the body is really a truth detector. Any symptom at all is connected to something that's gone awry in these 4 categories.
Really a great place to conclude here today. Dr. Barker, again, thanks for your time and joining us here today. Of course, you are the author on your book. It is your latest release, Nightlight, My Soul Calling, Body Listening, Heart Speaking. Where can listeners get more information on yourself as well as the book, and where can they best pick up the book?
My website is carabarker.com. So they can see the website there. My email is dr.carabarker@gmail.com. It may take me a while to get back because I really do have lots and lots of messages every day, but I will do my best.
Easy enough, and of course we'll include that link within the show notes of this broadcast. Dr. Barker, all the best. Thanks so much for joining us here today on eHealth Radio.
Thank you so much.
And you're more than welcome. We've been speaking with Dr. Cara Lee Barker. She is a popular public speaker who has a private international practice that helps individuals transform their secret suffering into greater strength. Dr. Barker is the author of 3 books, including her latest release, Nightlight, My Soul Calling, Body Listening, Heart Speaking. And for further details, visit carabarker.com. And again, this is Eric Michaels, and we do thank you for your continued support of the eHealth Radio Network. Join us again soon for another episode that will help further expand your knowledge on those things that are important to your health and wellness. For more eHealth Radio reports, we invite you to visit our main radio channel site at eHealthRadioNetwork.com. And as always, we do thank you for tuning in.
Thanks for tuning in to the eHealth Radio Network. For more information or to subscribe to this podcast, visit eHealthRadioNetwork.com.